Hello everyone, back to today's second video. So we've already released the part 2 of the spring analogues, and you can find that video here on the homepage. Just scroll down the page a little bit, and it's above Snow Desk. That will be placed on the spring updates and forecast page later on today with a written report as well. It's looking at springs in relation to ENSO for this part 2 of our spring analogues. So, looking back at past years that had La Nina conditions through the winter, and then see what the spring was like that followed those La Nina winters, either going back to ENSO neutral or continuing with La Nina through the spring. So have a look at the part 2 of our spring analogues if you would like to do that. As I say, it will be placed on the spring updates and forecast page later on today with a written report. Just say that this evening we are going to have an ensembles watch. We'll go through all members of BGF ensembles, see what they're showing. But this video is the GWV Sunday Round Up. So we're going to have our usual eclectic mix of this and that and the other. And you'll be able to see what's going on in terms of the stratosphere. We can have a detailed assessment of the situation in the stratosphere for the Sunday Round Up today. Also have a look at the updated solar tracker. That's been sent through by James, so big thanks James sending that through. We'll have a look at when it's week 10 days, of course, and some of the indexes. So get yourself a cup of tea and enjoy the GWV's Sunday Roundup. We're going to begin by having a look at January, just closing the door on January, really. So this is the mean temperature anomaly from the UK Met Office for January 2018, set against 61 to 1990. What happened is that it was generally close to average up across Scotland, but it was a significantly milder than average month for much of England, and particularly central, southern and eastern parts of England, with an anomaly of around 1.5 degrees above average. So it was a fairly mild month in the south, but it was cooler up in the north. Then that's the old and cold temperature average, 61 to 1990. It encompasses the really cold decade of the 1960s. If we set it against a more modern and warmer average, this is how we come out. It's a very similar pattern, but it's actually a bit colder than average then for central northern parts of Scotland, close to average for Northern Ireland. And then for England and Wales, still above average, but not such a big deviation. And for rainfall, this is how it comes out. So most places have an average sort of rainfall total for January 2018. It was a bit drier than average, or actually significantly drier than average for eastern parts of Scotland. And interestingly, it was wetter than average for southwestern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, parts of Wales, but the bulk of the country actually comes out very, very close to average to climatology. So not a big deviation at all in terms of rainfall. This was the analogue we was working to when we did the winter forecast for January. So it's one of those funny months, really. We said that we definitely got a blocking signal up to our north and northeast, but we'd also got a very deep trough just to our south and southwest. So we said it's the sort of month that can go either way. Either the trough could be influential, and in which case you would have quite a mildish month, or this ridge to the northeast, the block, could be more dominant, in which case you would have quite a cold month. So it was a complicated January. We thought there probably would be some cold outbreaks in there, and I think overall it turned out a little bit milder than we anticipated, but it always looked like a funny month that could go either way, very much a knife edge month for January. This is actually how January 2018 looks in terms of the reanalysis. So points of interest is that we do have the blocking signal up to the northeast, have a big area of above average heights there, and the trough is actually centred more towards the UK. So it's still the same idea, it's just everything shunted a bit further north, really. We've got the trough, which is the driving factor, and that's the reason we have the mild and average temperatures away from Scotland anyway, because it's an Atlantic-driven month. if everything had been shoved a few hundred miles further south, this blocking feature up to the northeast could have given us quite a cold month. I think overall the reanalysis isn't all that far away, but we have for January this year in terms of the winter forecast. So I'm relatively pleased with how the analogues are holding up, and that comes as well from December, which also I don't think that was too bad an analogue either. February is looking rather different though to what we anticipated, because we thought that February would probably be quite an Atlantic driven and mild month. Actually, it might be the coldest month of the winter, but overall I think the winter forecast is holding up reasonably well. This is the sea surface, or these are the sea surface temperature anomaly charts from NOAA. Just have a quick look at those. So we've got the Pacific over here, got the Atlantic over here. Three areas we're specifically interested in. We've got the ENSO region just there from Peru to Indonesia. Northern Pacific, of course, interested in that, and over in the Atlantic Ocean as well. So that's how the oceans were looking this time last week, when we did last week's Sunday Roundup. This is how things are looking now. Very little change. We've cooled things down a little bit in this northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean. We've still got the ongoing La Nina signal, which is why our part 2 of the spring analogues today is focusing on springs that come after La Nina winters. So still got the La Nina signature there, the cold event signature across the equatorial Pacific Ocean. And then in the Atlantic, no real changes, to be honest. Still quite warm, the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. It is turning ever cooler around this coast of Africa. These are shallow waters, so it might not necessarily last to the summer. But if those cold or cooler than average sea surface temperature anomalies were to last around the coast of Africa, it may dampen down the hurricane season a little bit. But of course, got a long way to go before we get to the summer and the beginning of the 2018 hurricane season. Overall, not much changing in the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans over the past week. Solar activity next. So this is the solar disk on our side of the disk today from solarham.net. We can see that the solar disk remains spotless, having quite an extended run of low activity. Solar activity is officially at very low levels and is expected to remain so, according to forecasts at Solarham, for the next 3 days as well. So we are into a very low level of solar activity, of course, at the moment. This is the GWV Sunday Roundup Solar Activity Tracker, updated to yesterday by a friend, James Ackrill. Big thank you, James, for updating this and sending it through as always. So solar activity just remains at very low levels. You can see what's going on. The thick green and thick red lines are the trend lines for the time of the year, and we can see that again solar activity remains at a very minimal level indeed. We are still getting occasional rises in sunspot numbers, but they are very minimal rises now. And you actually see that, we spoke about this last week, the trend lines are moving down a little bit further. We aren't yet at true solar minimum. We will be in around a year to 18 months time, but we're definitely very close now, getting ever closer to solar minimum. So we're going to start to string together more and more days, eventually weeks, of no sunspot activities. As we do that, the threat of colder winters will probably increase, because around solar minimum you tend to increase the chance of northern blocking through feedback mechanism, probably related to the weakening of the jet stream across the northern Atlantic. So we can expect as we go into solar minimum and then go out of solar minimum over the next 2 or 3 years, that our chances of cold winters will increase. But never a guarantee, of course, with the weather. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Every year is individual, but it is kind of like loading the dice a bit towards a colder outcome. So big thanks to James for saying that through. We'll continue to monitor the solar tracker over the next few weeks and months, of course. Right, looking at the stratosphere, interesting developments going on there in the next few days. Starting with a look at what's happening at 30 HPA over the North Pole at the moment. So the grey line here is a trend, and the black line is where we've been with the temperature through this season. We start at September just here. You can see that through the end of December into January, we went very, very cold with the temperature in the stratosphere over North Pole at 30 HPA. That black line really plunging way below the grey line, so really cold. Then we lifted the temperature back close to the grey line further into January, and then a bit up and down. This is where we are right now, colder than average, still quite cold at 30 HPA, and I say colder than you would expect us to be at this time of the year. This is 10 HPA, it's a bit further up in the stratosphere in the North Pole. Again, same idea, the grey line is the trend, the black line is where we've been through this season. So again, at 10 HPA, as with 30 HPA, we went very cold with the temperature in the stratosphere over North Pole at the beginning of January. Then, just recently, though, we've lifted the temperature up quite a bit. We see the black line lifting up to around -40, still very cold temperature, of course, but above average. So we did have a bit of a warming of the stratosphere over North Pole a few days ago. Now, actually, we're a little bit colder than average again, we're a little bit under that grey line. What we're looking for is a stratospheric warming, which would lift that black line up to that sort of level, or even a sudden stratospheric warming, which would lift that black line up potentially to that sort of level. If we get that, and it happens over 2 or 3 days, if we get that, it can week or so down the track, start to propagate down into the troposphere with those warm temperatures, and then once it gets to the troposphere, it can start to set up a blocking area of high pressure. Now, for about the past week, we've been talking about the chances of a sudden stratospheric warming over the North Pole at 10 HPA, and this is the latest forecast from the GFS model. This is at measureshield.fr. We're starting today, 4th of February. The blue colours here, those are the cold temperatures that we've got at 10 HPA over the North Pole. Have got a bit of a warming across Russia and Siberia, you'll notice. So as we run through, that tries to move into the pole, but not a great deal comes of it, and we keep those blue colours going for the next few days. But notice what starts happening around the 10th of February. Suddenly those blue colours are being literally pulled apart as these green and yellow colours start to infiltrate into the pole from both Russia over here, Siberia, and also from the Atlantic and Greenland over there. So very quickly we start to see red colours appearing. We're up to the 12th of February now, and red colours are starting to appear over both Russia and also over Greenland. If you go to the extended range of the GFS, so this is how it looks, and a very pronounced warming starts to take place indeed. So by the time we get through to around the middle of February, all of those blue colours have gone, and we've just got a really warm temperature at 10 HPA in the stratosphere. And then we get a renewed burst of warming, very dramatically, appearing over Canada, which is quite an unusual place to get a sudden stratospheric warming. So we are going to definitely be seeing a weakening of the polar vortex if this comes on. Remember, the polar vortex kind of like rooted to the stratosphere. The polar vortex is actually within the troposphere. That's the boundary layer of the atmosphere where weather takes place. But above that, we've got the stratosphere, and that's where the roots of the polar vortex are. So this is almost like, it's going to be almost like digging up the roots of the polar vortex and kind of throwing them away. So we're going to see definitely a dramatic weakening of the polar vortex, I would have thought, and then probably get some sort of blocking setting up somewhere over the pole. Exactly where that blocking sets up is always the unknown factor. Where you see those red colours, so where you got the pronounced warming, is not necessarily where the blocking high will set up. So you never quite know where the block is going to set up, and not everywhere will be on the cold side of a blocking feature, of course, because somewhere is cold, another place will have to be mild. So we might get unlucky and find ourselves on the mild side of the block, but certainly this very dramatic developments. This is probably our most dramatic southern stratospheric warming event over the North Pole in the middle of winter since 2013. You remember the southern stratospheric warming occurred at the beginning of January 2013. Eventually led to a very cold pattern indeed. By the time we got to March 2013, we had our coldest March, I think, since 1883. So we probably won't get anything as dramatic as that, but definitely it's the most dramatic southern stratospheric warming event that we've had in the middle of winter for about 5 years. So really interesting developments. That's the GFS. The ECMWF is also picking up on this. This is from the University of Berlin website. Again, these are the temperature forecasts from the ECMWF model at 10 HPA. So we start here at 144 hours, which is the 9th of February. The black X cross there is marking where the actual pole of the North Pole is. And you'll see I've got those blue colours there over the pole, so still quite cold with temperature over the in the stratosphere over the pole at 144 hours. But if we move through, you'll see that to 168 hours, we're starting to see those blue colours beginning to lift out. By 192 hours, a definite southern stratospheric warming is starting to take place here. The temperature is shooting up by several degrees over the North Pole. Again, you've got those two areas of warming, one over here around Russia and Siberia, the other one over here around the Atlantic and Greenland, and both of these areas of warming are moving their way into the pole in the stratosphere. And look at that, we get through to 216 hours, which is the 12th of February, and the temperature has really gone up dramatically there over the North Pole in the stratosphere. So obviously, again, both these models, the GFS and the ECMWF, are seeing this. This is how we finish up with the ECMWF at 240 hours, day 10, the 13th of February. Really quite a warm, strikingly warm stratospheric temperature indeed. Now, what you have to do when we get this warming at 10 HPA is see if it propagates down into the troposphere. So not every time when you get a warming of the stratosphere like this, not every time will it propagate down to the troposphere. We have to get it down into the troposphere to set up the blocking feature. One of the ways we look to see whether we're moving the warming down into the troposphere is to go a bit lower with the stratosphere. So we're going down to 30 HPA now, which is a little bit lower than the level we were just looking at, 10 HPA. This is the temperature at 30 HPA, temperature forecast at 30 HPA by the ECMWF model via University of Berlin website. For the 10th of February, you see we've got those blue colours there, deep blue colours, so we've still got really cold temperatures in the stratosphere, a little bit lower though at 30 HPA in a week's time. But if we run on to day 10, which is, again, 13th of February, you'll see the temperature is warming up there at 30 HPA. So this is telling us that the warming that we have here of the stratosphere at 10 HPA, which is very high up, it's telling us that that is moving down into the lower level of the stratosphere at 30 HPA and will probably move down into the troposphere. So this is looking like a genuine southern stratospheric warming event, and it probably is going to impact the troposphere. It will probably set up a blocking feature, but where that blocking feature sets up is at this point unknown. Another way is looking at the wind and the zonal winds and fluxes. So we can see here that the zonal wind is going to be heading down almost to negative territory. This is where we are with the zonal winds, excuse me, right now. And they have weakened quite a lot compared to where they were sort of in December and January, which was up here, had very strong zonal winds then. But you'll see from this black line, which is the forecast part of this chart, that the black line is going down almost towards a reversal of the zonal winds. It goes very, very close to a reversal. Whether it would actually reverse the zonal winds with that, I'm not sure. But certainly a very dramatic weakening of the zonal wind is expected, and that is in response to the southern stratospheric warming. I've got a feeling the zonal wind may well go more towards the negative side than that is showing. And then another way to see whether blocking is going to set up is look at the Arctic oscillation. So this is the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart. The black line here tells us where we've been with the Arctic oscillation. Red lines at the end where the Arctic oscillation is being forecast to go by the GFS ensembles. Been very up and down with the AO through this winter, but generally I think a little bit on the negative side, especially sort of from early December through to sort of mid-December, and then again from January through to the early part of February. Overall quite negative with the AO at times. The forecast is to actually go positive with the Arctic oscillation in the next week or so. That could be in response, an initial response to the southern stratospheric warming. Sometimes when these warmings are going on, actually you'll see that the AO goes into a more positive phase, as does the NAO, and then they'll both start to shift negative as the warming propagates down to the troposphere. We do have one or two ensemble members that are going very, very negative with the Arctic oscillation into the second half of February. Their outliers are a long way off. They might be picking up on the first response to that southern stratospheric warming. NAO is same idea. This is the observed forecast chart for the NAO. Black line tells us where we've been with the NAO. Red lines at the end where GFS ensembles forecasting the NAO to go. Generally, we've been positive with the NAO through winter. This is the 1st of December just here. Before that, through much of November, it was quite negative. But we hit the 1st of December, and ever since then, we've very gradually been trending more and more positive with the NAO. That's where we are right now, still in solidly positive territory. And the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NAO to stay and maybe even become even more positive, stay positive, maybe even become even more positive as we go into the next week or so. But maybe this outlier member just here might be picking up on a response to the stratospheric warming. That one's going down towards negative territory. We're going to have to wait and see a bit longer whether these indexes start to respond to the developments within the stratosphere. I expect the second half of December, second half of February, I should say, we'll see both the AO and the NAO going into negative territory. But we shall see, and we'll be keeping an eye on those charts in the coming days. Now, despite the fact that the indexes are going to be in positive territory, actually we're in for quite a cold spell of weather. So these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature average. We're cold now, and we're going to be staying cold for the next week as well, trending quite substantially underneath that red line. So we're in for quite a bit of cold weather in the week ahead. Now, yesterday when we did the week ahead forecast, there was a suggestion that by the end of this week and sort of next weekend, we would probably start to bring back milder weather from off the Atlantic. That doesn't look as clear-cut now, actually. So many of these ensemble members, and we will do an ensembles watch this evening to go through the ensembles and see what they're all showing individually. But many of these ensemble members now are keeping things really quite cold through the second week of February, and that's this period just here. Have still got a few ensemble members that are going quite mild, but many of these ensemble members are trending underneath the red line. The white line here is the ensemble mean, and that also never goes above the red line, never goes above average. So overall, the GFS ensembles appear to be shifting more towards the colder side of things going up to the middle part of February. In terms of precipitation, a lot of dry weather through the next few days, then gradually turning more and more unsettled at the end of this coming week. And if we keep the cold weather going, so as it turns more unsettled, the threat of snow will probably increase. That's the temperature anomaly for the next week for Europe, and you'll see many northern and western and central parts of Europe coming out colder than average from the 4th through to the 12th of February. The milder than average temperature anomalies are in the southeast of Europe, but really quite a strikingly cold Europe, actually, in the week ahead. The British Isles is including that. Precipitation anomalies from the 4th to the 12th of February coming out drier than average, as you'd expect with it being cold. When it's cold, it tends to be quite dry in the winter because cold air holds less moisture than warm air. So drier and colder than average for much of northern and western Europe in the week ahead. So let's just have a look at the GFS and ECM before we go. This is how things are looking on Thursday. Now we've got a bit of a complication for Thursday because we've got this system trying to come in from off the Atlantic that might bring some rain, sleet and snow into the west. You'll notice by 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday, we've got this area of low pressure just here. There's a weather front that's through there, and that low pressure is stalling. It's not getting as far east as it was yesterday, and the reason that's happening is that heights are being maintained over Scandinavia. Not a big Scandinavian high, but certainly heights are being maintained more over Scandinavia compared to what we were seeing yesterday. All of these pink and purple colours over here, by the way, that's the cold temperatures and the polar vortex around Greenland. If the stratospheric warming does come off and gets into the troposphere, you'll see those colours very rapidly starting to disappear by the middle of February, I would have thought. But anyway, for Friday, we've got a band of rain, sleet or snow in the west being blocked by the Scandinavian high. As we go through to Saturday, a ridge is building from the Atlantic and going up towards Scandinavia as well. So this is maintaining cold weather. The Atlantic is not breaking through here, such as we saw yesterday when we did the weekend broadcast. But mild air is actually going up to there, away to our north and west. And actually, this is keeping things quite cold across the country under this ridge. That ridge continues through to Sunday, 11th of February. And it's still there, really, by Monday the 12th. It is turning a bit milder for northern parts of the country, but for England and Wales, we're still under that ridge. So still mostly dry and cold and frosty, I would have thought, there. We get to day 10, and that's how things are looking on day 10, which is Wednesday, 14th of February. And heights are ever building across Scandinavia. Still have those pink and purple colours around Greenland, but if I run you out a bit beyond day 10, look what starts to happen very quickly. Those pink and purple colours are lifting out. We're getting into a more and more blocked pattern. This is possibly the GFS starting to pick up on the response to that stratospheric warming. The pink and purple colours around Greenland are lifting out, and that's how we finish up with the GFS looking really quite blocked indeed. We've got high pressure over Scandinavia. Looks like we're lifting heights up around Greenland. We've got a ridge through the Atlantic. And then we've got this big area of low pressure to our south. That's heavy snow with a strong easterly wind that's affecting many parts of the country there. That's a long way off, don't take that literally, but it is the idea that into the second half of February, we might see the blocking signal getting stronger and maybe a little bit more extreme. ECWF finally, and again, we've got this trough of low pressure coming in from the Atlantic for Thursday. Again, a bit of a stall is taking place, so this is rain, sleet or snow in the west, Thursday to Friday. This isn't getting through to the east because of the heights that are up over Scandinavia. Running to next weekend, and we build this ridge across the south, which maintains probably quite cold weather for England and Wales, turns a bit milder for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And then we're running up towards day 10, and that's how we get to day 10. That's how things look on Wednesday, 14th of February. And again, I think we might be starting to see signs of these pink and purple colours starting to ease across Greenland by day 10, although still quite a strong polar vortex by then. But you'll notice again, heights are relatively high to the east and also down here. That ridge is, area of high pressure is trying to push northeastwards, and it looks like if we could go on a bit further, we would probably strengthen the blocking signal up to the northeast. So I've got a feeling we are probably going to find ourselves going into a more blocked pattern actually as we get into the middle and second half of February, and the coldest period of the winter may still yet be to come actually, and it could get really quite cold indeed if that high pressure properly locks in around Scandinavia or Greenland. In terms of the next few days, though, we're going to see pretty cold week coming up this week. So there will be a little bit of snow around at times as well. Although it's not going to be a desperately wintry week, but there will be some snow for some of us, and just generally quite a cold feel. And then it might try and turn a bit milder next weekend, but I think for the south, we're still probably hanging on quite cold conditions through next weekend, actually. And then I think as we go deeper into February, all eyes will be on whether we start to set up a more pronounced blocking pattern, either to our northeast or to our north. This could turn out to be quite a cold February. Say no more than that at this stage, and we'll keep checking back for more. Don't forget to have a look at the spring analogues if you haven't yet done so. And this evening, probably around 7 o'clock, we'll have a look at the GFS ensemble, see how many of those are picking up on a strengthening of the blocking signal for the middle and second half of February. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.